The soft crunch of sandpaper against wood fills the silence as Aaron kneels on the half-finished floor, his calloused hands moving in rhythmic circles. Sweat beads on his forehead despite the chill seeping through the walls of his parents' aging house. $3,700, nearly everything he'd saved, poured into this room over the past 2 months. Every nail, every brushstroke, every decision made with painstaking care. Aaron pauses, feeling the floor beneath him give slightly under his weight. That familiar musty odor rises again, stronger this time. He presses his palm against the subfloor, feeling the subtle sponginess that shouldn't be there. "Dad," he calls out, standing and dusting off his jeans. "I think we might have a problem down here." His father's heavy footsteps approach before the man appears in the doorway, eyes narrowing as they sweep across the half-finished room. "What is it now?" His voice carries the edge of impatience that Aaron has grown accustomed to over the years. "The subfloor, it's soft in spots. And that smell. I think there might be moisture damage underneath. We should probably tear it up and check before I lay down the new hardwood." His father scoffs, waving a dismissive hand. "Always looking for problems where there aren't any. That house smell's been there for 30 years. Just cover it up and keep going. But if there's mold or rot, you want to live here rent-free or not?" His father cuts him off, voice hardening. "That was the deal? You fix up the room and you can stay until you get back on your feet. But I'm not paying for you to tear apart perfectly good floors because you smell something funny." The words hang between them, a familiar impasse. Aaron swallows his protest, nodding slowly as his father turns and walks away. Their agreement, the promise of a place to stay while he rebuilds his life after the layoff, feels suddenly precarious, balanced on his compliance rather than their bond. Over the next weeks, Aaron works through his misgivings, covering up the soft spots, masking the smell with fresh wood and paint. His hands move methodically, but his mind churns with worry about what lies beneath. Still, he perseveres, transforming the neglected space hour by painstaking hour. On the final day, Aaron stands in the doorway surveying his creation. Sunlight streams through freshly cleaned windows, catching on the rich amber tones of the hardwood he'd installed plank by careful plank. The sage-green walls, his mother's favorite color, seem to breathe new life into the space. Everything is perfect, exactly as she would have wanted it. A lump forms in his throat as he imagines her pride if she could see it now. Beneath his feet, the floor feels solid, the musty smell masked by fresh paint and polish. But Aaron knows what lies beneath the surface, problems ignored, warnings dismissed, compromises made. Just like so many things in this house. Just like so many things in his relationship with his father. For now, though, he has a place to call home, even if its foundation feels as uncertain as his future. Aaron stands in the doorway of his newly renovated room, fingers tracing the fresh paint on the doorframe. Pride swells in his chest as he takes in his handiwork, the gleaming hardwood floors, the sage-green walls, the carefully installed baseboards. Every detail speaks of his dedication, every corner a testament to his skill. 3 weeks of backbreaking labor and nearly $4,000 from his savings, but the sense of accomplishment makes it all worthwhile. "Mom, Dad, come look. It's finally finished," he calls out, eager to share this moment with them. His parents' footsteps echo down the hallway. Their expressions remain impassive as they survey the room, exchanging glances that make Aaron's stomach tighten. "It looks nice, son," his father says flatly. "Real professional job." His mother nods, a tight smile on her lips. "Those green walls turned out lovely." Aaron waits for more, for the approval he's been seeking, for acknowledgement of his sacrifice. Instead, his father clears his throat. "There's something we need to discuss." The words hang heavy in the air between them. His mother suddenly finds the floor fascinating, refusing to meet his gaze. "Tara called yesterday," his father continues. "She's coming home from college early. Her roommate situation, it didn't work out." Aaron nods slowly, uncertain where this is heading. "Okay, but what does that She'll need this room," his mother interjects, her voice artificially bright. "She needs her own space, you know how she is." The understanding crashes over Aaron like ice water. "This room? The one I just rebuilt with my own money. She's always been so sensitive about having her privacy," his mother continues as if he hadn't spoken. "And with her anxiety issues." "When?" Aaron asks, his voice hollow. "She'll be here tomorrow," his father states plainly. "So we need you to move your things out tonight." No apology. No offer to reimburse him. No acknowledgement of the betrayal slicing through him like a blade. "Tonight," Aaron repeats, the word tasting like ash. "And where exactly am I supposed to go?" His father shrugs. "You're 26, Aaron. Most men your age have their own places." In that moment, something inside Aaron, something that had been bending for years, finally snaps. Without another word, he turns and walks to his old bedroom. With mechanical efficiency, he stuffs clothes into his duffel bag, grabs his laptop, and collects the few belongings that matter. Neither parent follows him as he carries his life out to his pickup truck. Neither calls after him as he slides behind the wheel. The engine roars to life, drowning out the voice in his head that keeps asking why he was never enough. That night, huddled in the reclined driver's seat of his truck, Aaron watches his breath fog the windows as temperatures drop. His phone buzzes Mike, an old college friend, responding to his desperate text. "Come crash at my place, man. Guest room's yours as long as you need it." A lump forms in Aaron's throat. More generosity from a friend than he'd received from his own blood. As he starts the engine and pulls away from the curb, Aaron doesn't look back at the house where he poured his heart into a room he'd never call his own. 2 days after Aaron drove away from what he once called home, the inevitable text message from his mother arrived. There's something wrong with the room. He ignored it, focusing instead on organizing his few belongings in Mike's sparse guest room. By evening, his phone was lighting up with increasingly frantic messages. "Aaron, call us now. The entire house smells terrible," his father wrote, followed minutes later by, "There's black mold everywhere in that room you built." A hollow laugh escaped Aaron's lips. During the renovation, he'd noticed moisture in the northwest corner of the room, the corner where the exterior siding had been damaged last winter. He'd pointed it out to his father, suggesting they address it before completing the walls. "Just cover it up," his father had said dismissively. "We're not spending more money on this project." Aaron had argued, explained the dangers of trapped moisture, how it could lead to exactly this situation. His warnings fell on deaf ears. By the third day, his phone became a war zone. His sister Tara, "Thanks for making me sick. My allergies are exploding because of whatever you did to this room." His mother, "The remediation company says this will cost thousands. You knew about this, didn't you?" And most scathing, his father, "You did this deliberately. I always knew you resented your sister." Aaron sat on the edge of Mike's guest bed, staring at the accusations piling up. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing a measured response. "I warned you about the moisture damage in the northwest corner 3 times. You told me to just cover it up. I have the texts." The momentary silence that followed felt like the eye of a hurricane. Then came the storm. "Don't try to shift blame," his aunt wrote in the family group chat he hadn't even realized he was still part of. "Your parents gave you a home for years, and this is how you repay them?" Cousins he barely spoke to chimed in. His mother's friends, somehow looped into the conversation, added their outrage. The narrative crystallized with frightening speed. Aaron, the ungrateful son, had sabotaged his childhood home out of spite. Mike found him that night in the kitchen, staring blankly at his phone. "Family problems?" Mike asked, sliding a beer across the counter. "They're creating a reality where I'm the villain," Aaron said, his voice distant. "And the scary thing is, I think they actually believe it. Why not just block them?" Aaron's thumb hovered over the block button, but he couldn't press it. Some irrational part of him still hoped for the words he'd never heard. "We were wrong. We're sorry." Instead, his phone dinged with another accusation, another demand for money, another revision of history where his warnings became sabotage and his labor became malice. "You know what's funny?" Aaron said, finally setting the phone face down. "That room was the only thing I was proud of in that house. Now they've taken that too." 3 weeks after Aaron's departure, the harassment began in earnest. His father's silver sedan appeared in Mike's apartment parking lot one evening, lingering like a predator. Aaron watched from between the blinds as his father paced, occasionally glancing up at the windows before finally driving away. "They're escalating," Aaron told Mike, his voice tighter than he wanted it to be. "You could get a restraining order," Mike suggested, but Aaron shook his head. Something in him still couldn't believe it had come to this. The next day, Aaron's manager pulled him aside at his new job. "There's someone asking for you at the front desk. Says he's your father." Aaron's stomach twisted into a familiar knot. "I'm sorry about this. Could you tell him I'm unavailable?" His phone vibrated constantly now, emails, texts, voicemails piling up like debris after a storm. Handwritten letters appeared in Mike's mailbox, his mother's flowing script filling pages with a mixture of guilt, demands, and thinly veiled threats. "You're tearing this family apart," one letter read. Your sister can barely breathe in this house now. The remediation company says it could be $12,000 or more. You need to take responsibility for what you've done. Aaron read each message once, then filed them away in a folder labeled Evidence without responding. Each night, he'd lie awake, rehearsing what he would say if confronted, steeling himself against the emotional hooks designed to pull him back into their orbit. That confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday. Aaron was walking to his car after his shift when he spotted his father leaning against his driver's side door. "You can't keep ignoring us," his father said, raindrops darkening his shoulders. "This has gone on long enough." Aaron stopped several feet away, hands in his pockets to hide their trembling. "I have nothing to say to you." "Nothing to say? After what you did? The entire upstairs is contaminated. Your mother is having migraines. Tara's asthma." "I warned you," Aaron cut in, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his body. 3 times I pointed out the moisture problem. 3 times you told me to cover it up. That's not it. It is true, and we both know it." Aaron took a deep breath. "This relationship is over. I'm not paying for your negligence, and I'm not accepting blame for a problem I specifically warned you about." His father's face reddened. "After everything we've done for you. What you've done is use guilt, manipulation, and conditional love my entire life," Aaron said, finally giving voice to the realization that had been forming since he drove away. "And it doesn't work anymore." From the corner of his eye, Aaron saw Mike approaching from across the parking lot, having arrived as they'd planned in case something like this happened. "You need to leave," Mike said firmly, positioning himself slightly between Aaron and his father. "Or we call security." For a moment, Aaron's father seemed to deflate, rain dripping from his hair down his face like tears. Then his expression hardened again. "You always were ungrateful," he spat, pushing off the car. "Don't come crawling back when you realize what you've thrown away." Aaron watched him drive away, the tightness in his chest not quite pain, not quite relief. "You okay?" Mike asked. Aaron nodded slowly. "I think I finally am." 6 months had passed since that rainy confrontation in the parking lot. 6 months of building walls that weren't meant to keep memories in, but to protect the life Aaron was carefully constructing for himself. His apartment, though small, had become a sanctuary, a place where no one questioned his worth or attached conditions to their presence. "I think you'd like this one," Aaron said to Mike as he scrolled through job listings. He'd found stable work at a construction company that valued his attention to detail. Project manager position. Better pay, and they specifically want someone who can identify structural issues early. "Sounds perfect for you," Mike replied, raising his coffee mug in a toast. "From hiding problems to solving them, that's what I call growth." It happened on a Saturday morning at the farmer's market. Aaron turned a corner and nearly collided with his cousin Ellie, her arms full of fresh produce. "Aaron," she exclaimed, genuine warmth in her voice. They hadn't been close, but she'd always been kind, existing on the periphery of family drama. They found a bench and Aaron braced himself for the inevitable questions. Instead, Ellie simply asked, "Are you doing okay?" Something in her tone broke through his practiced defenses. "I am. Better than I've been in years, actually." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "They're selling the house, you know. Had to take out a second mortgage for the remediation. The mold was worse than anyone thought." Aaron absorbed this without the guilt that would have crushed him months earlier. "I tried to warn them," he said softly, not with vindication but simple acknowledgement. "I know you did," Ellie replied. "Some people can't hear truth until it's too late." Walking home, Aaron felt an unexpected lightness. He'd spent his life thinking family meant blood and obligation, enduring criticism disguised as concern and manipulation masked as love. Now he understood that real family, the kind worth having, was built on respect that flowed both ways, on care that didn't come with invoices attached. That evening, standing on his balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in colors his old bedroom never knew, Aaron realized the true renovation had been within himself. He had learned to recognize his own value, to stand firmly in his truth when the emotional storms came, and most importantly, to walk away from relationships that required his constant diminishment. "The most important skill," he whispered to the fading light, "is knowing when to put down the tools and admit some things aren't yours to fix." His phone buzzed, friends inviting him to dinner. Friends who asked for his company, not his sacrifice. Friends whose laughter didn't come at his expense. This was the foundation he was building now, connections formed by choice, not circumstance. Aaron typed a quick reply, smiling. The house his parents were selling had never truly been his home. But this life, constructed deliberately with boundaries for walls and self-respect for a foundation, this was his masterpiece, built to last.